The story begins with an evil kingpin sitting down for a meeting with his associates, reminding them that they have been in the temp business for over 15 years. You can already tell that this is a man who has very little regard for other human beings, as he has men serving as chairs for his associates to sit on, and he even uses one of their hands as an ashtray. Today marks a significant occasion for their shady operation, so they decide to celebrate. A glass of wine is poured by a guy with glasses and then passed over to a tester to take a sip first and confirm there is no poison before the kingpin drinks it. The tester takes a sip and gives the all clear, saying the drink is clean. With that, the kingpin pours himself a glass and takes a sip. But almost immediately after that single sip, he begins to collapse, making it clear that the drink was in fact poisoned. The others immediately grab the tester, assuming he is the one behind it, but it was actually the work of the guy who poured the drink in the first place, Gero. With that handled, Gero changes back into his regular clothes and heads home, but on the way he spots a beautiful blonde girl kissing a man inside his car. Gero gets so caught up watching them that he walks straight into a wall. Later that night, after Gero gets home, where he settles in with some ice cream while his younger sister Akari asks him how he managed to slip the poison past the poison tester. Gero explains that all he did was slowly build up an immunity in the tester over time. He spent 3 months quietly adding small doses of poison to the tester's food until his body was able to withstand a lethal amount. Akari hears this and says that must have been an enormous amount of effort, and Gero admits it definitely was. Nobody would ever expect someone to go to such ridiculous lengths, and that is exactly why they are able to stay in the hitman business. That aside, Akari asks Gero whether he has given any thought to getting married, and Gero nearly chokes on his ice cream at the question. Gero is honestly convinced he has very little hope of ever getting married, especially since he barely comes into contact with women in this line of work. He recalls that their grandmother wants one of them to take over as the new head of the poison clan, and when he told her he could not because he was single, she went ahead and matched him up with a complete stranger from a branch family and nearly pushed him into getting married on the spot. Gero knows this means that if he stays single, the line of poison masters will end with him. Akari acknowledges that, adding that it is not as if she can really picture girls chasing after him anyway. Gero then pulls out his phone and sees a message from the Bugmaster, so he heads out to grab a bite with him. They make small talk for a while and Gero brings up how he plans on spending the rest of his life as a single man, but that is when the Bugmaster mentions that he is actually thinking about getting married soon to a quiet and sweet girl he met not too long ago. Gero genuinely finds this surprising because he always assumed the Bugmaster would end up growing old alone. That aside, the Bugmaster makes a point of reminding Gero that just because he is getting married does not change the fact that they are still good friends. With that said, the Bugmaster activates his bug legs and begins to leave, but Gero calls him back at the last second and tells him that he has always looked at marriage as something negative. But after hearing him talk about it tonight, he is starting to think it might not be so bad after all. The next day, Gero heads to a new job, and on the way there, the man who hired him starts talking about the girls who work at his office, but Gero just brushes it off and tells him to keep his eyes on what they came there to do. That aside, his man goes on to introduce Gero to the next criminal on the list that needs to be taken out, a woman named May, a cold-hearted marriage swindler who has been causing a great deal of trouble. He asks Gero to handle her. Gero wastes no time and injects her with a serum, telling her she is about to experience severe nerve paralysis that will work its way up toward the brain. He tells her that within seconds she is going to be in agony, feeling as though she is being torn apart from the inside. But rather than being frightened by this, May just starts flirting with Gero. Gero does not take the bait and figures it is nothing more than a last-ditch attempt to save herself. May admits that she did con people, but explains that she mainly did it to pay for treatment for her younger brother who is very sick. She says she grabbed every opportunity she could find and took on jobs she could never tell a single person about. But even that was never enough. She coughs up some blood as the poison begins to take hold, and adds that if she is going to die with someone who looks just like the man she loves watching over her, then she supposes that is good enough for her. She looks Gero straight in the eyes and asks him to at least tell her his name before it is over. Gero feels a slight warmth rise to his face as he quietly tells her. Meanwhile, the man watches Gero work through a screen, and the girls around start to wonder why it is taking him so long, questioning whether he is actually as good as people say, but the man just tells them to relax because he comes from the Gero family, one of the oldest and most respected names in the assassination business, so he has no doubt he will get the job done. Back with Gero, he finds himself genuinely wondering whether May actually has real feelings for him, but that is when Akari suddenly calls and tells him that she is moving back to the main house because she has decided to help produce the next heir to the Gero family and the new poison master. One of the branch family members is also looking for a partner, so she has decided to simply marry him. Gero cuts her off and tells her she does not have to go that far, but Akari reminds him that their grandmother is completely serious about getting an heir, and even said that if Akari refuses, she will strip away her freedom and force the matter. So Akari would rather do things her own way and on her own terms. Gero asks what will happen to her girlfriend, and Akari simply says she is going to have to end things with her. Gero tells her to hold on and not do anything just yet. He walks back over to May and asks her to marry him. He explains that in order to become the head of the poison clan, he needs to be married, and since she at least has feelings for him, he wants it to be her. He also mentions that he would be able to help with her brother's illness on top of that. May looks up at him with a bright expression that briefly makes Gero smile, but then her face goes completely cold as she tells him there is absolutely no way she would ever agree to that. She explains that she knew she was going to die anyway, so she just wanted to take one last shot at something for the fun of it, and now she can go in peace. She then tells him that other people fall in love and get married because they are genuinely right for each other, but in his case, he is never going to be a good match for someone he could end at any moment without a second thought. She tells him that if he ever wants to be a good match for someone, he has to start by being honest about how he really feels, because a marriage built only for inheritance will never last. Gero hears this and finally opens up. He tells her that even though he is meant to be a cold-blooded assassin, he still wants a quiet life with someone he loves. He wants someone who will love him for who he is and truly care about his feelings, but he believes that will never happen because he never went to a normal school and never had the chance to meet any girls. He has lived his whole life as a poison master, and he was trained to never open his heart to anyone. May starts to laugh when she hears this because he just shared his feelings with her even though they only just met. She tells him it is not as hard as he thinks. All he needs to do is meet different kinds of people, and sooner or later he will find the right one. Then she tells him to just finish the job. As she says this, she begins to cry, realizing that her little brother's medical bills will never be paid now. Suddenly, the handler arrives with his group and tells Gero to stop wasting time and kill May already. But Gero refuses. He says he is not going to kill her because he needs her. He believes that May must be skilled at bringing people together if she was chosen to marry into their group, so he wants to hire her for that. He promises that he will do everything he can to keep her and her little brother alive, and in return, he wants her to help him find someone to marry. May is surprised and a bit excited when she hears this, because no one has ever said something like that to her before, but a bullet suddenly flies past her face. The handler says he is disappointed in Gero, and now he has no choice but to kill him. He adds that killing the heir of the poison master will push them to the top of their field. Gero says that the handler and his group ruin people's lives by stealing jobs from ordinary people and then blackmailing them with what they find. Gero explains that he only kills bad people without guilt, so that means they all qualify. Gero then injects himself with one of his serums and it affects his body right away. His eyes turn green and he puts on a gas mask. The handler and his group start shooting at him without holding back, but when the bullets stop, both Gero and May are gone. The handler looks up and sees them on the ceiling, but by then it is already too late. In the next moment, all of his men are on the ground, weak and unable to stand, because Gero has poisoned them. May is shocked to see how skilled Gero really is, because she thought he was just talking before. Gero tells her that he only used his 300 torments of hell poison, so they will not die, but the pain and fear should be enough to keep them from doing this kind of work again. After that, Gero calls Akari and tells her not to break up with her girlfriend, because he is going to get married and take over as the new head of the poison clan. Akari is happy to hear this. At that moment, the handler tries to escape. However, he runs straight into a one-way mirror and gets stuck. Gero then throws a poison needle into his back, giving him the same effect as the others and stopping him from getting away. After that, they leave the building and get ready to enter a taxi. body. May still cannot move because she is in the chair, so she asks Gero to carry her. Gero starts to panic right away because he has never touched a girl outside of work. May tells him to relax, then reveals that she is actually a guy. This shocks Gero and leaves him speechless. They go to a hotel where Gero confirms that May is really a guy. He asks why May wears women's clothes. May explains that he dresses as a woman when he tricks men, and dresses as a man when he tricks women. He says it is more fun to play both sides. May then promises Gero that by the time he is done helping him, he will be able to attract both men and women. May tells Gero that he has already signed him up for a matchmaking event and asks him to fill in his details. The next day, they attend the event and notice that there are far more men than women. To fix this, May dresses as a woman and draws attention from many of the men, which reduces the number of rivals Gero has to deal with. Gero learns that first impressions matter a lot, so May decides they need to find his natural charm and bring it out. When Gero talks to his first girl, he immediately tells her that he makes millions of dollars every year. This causes her to lose interest and reject him. When he tells May what happened, May is not surprised. He explains that leading with money only makes him look arrogant. May tells Gero to smile more next time. When Gero tries this with another group of girls, his smile looks forced and uncomfortable, and they all reject him. By the end of the day, Gero becomes frustrated because everything went worse than he expected. May then shows Gero a dating app that he signed him up for and tells him he already has a date. Later, during the date, Gero struggles to eat because he was trained as a poison master to never eat food he did not prepare himself. By the time he finally gathers the courage to take a bite, his date has already left. After all this, they decide to stop for the day and try again tomorrow. As May turns to go home, a jeep suddenly drives past, and someone pulls him inside before speeding away. Gero sees this and runs after the car, but he cannot catch up. Inside the car, the man asks May what he did to his older brother, the handler from earlier, and why he suddenly left the family cleaning services. May says he knows nothing about it, but the man does not believe him. He shoots a lead pellet at May from his mouth, which hits his face and causes pain. May still denies any knowledge. The man prepares to fire again. At that moment, the driver sees Gero standing in the middle of the road. They decide not to stop and try to run him over. Just before the car hits him, Gero jumps over it and strikes it with a special thermo poison. The attack is strong enough to split the moving car into two parts. Gero chases the broken car and catches up. As May's side of the car begins to fall off a bridge, Gero reaches him just in time and pulls him to safety, while the others fall into the water below. As Gero holds May, he returns the phone May dropped earlier and thanks him for the day. He says that because of May, he was able to meet many girls in one day. He admits that he is not good at this, but he still wants May's help. May realizes that Gero did not even get a single contact from the event, so he asks for Gero's number. May becomes Gero's first real friend, even though he doubts he will make many more. As they walk back together, May looks at Gero and feels drawn to him. In that moment, he understands that this is Gero's true charm. The next day, May shows Gero a flyer and tells him to meet her the following afternoon at the Avocado Oceanic Art Gallery. Gero has absolutely no idea how an art gallery on a cruise ship has anything to do with helping him find his charm, but May just tells him to trust the process and go along with it. Then the next day, May meets up with Gero at the entrance to the cruise ship and Gero is genuinely stunned by how beautiful she looks. Shortly after, the two of them step inside the art gallery and Gero is immediately caught off guard by just how breathtaking the scenery inside is, though he still cannot figure out why May brought him here of all places. May then explains that today is going to serve as his rehearsal for what a first date should actually look and feel like, with her playing the role of his date. She points out that even if Gero were to somehow manage to get a girl's number and set up a real date, the way he carries himself right now would make the whole thing go terribly, so she thinks it is far better to go in having practiced and prepared properly. Their mock date gets underway and May starts deducting points from Gero every time he comes across as either too stiff or too awkward in the way he acts. But then, after a little while of walking around, Gero stops in his tracks when he spots a 40-year-old DIY candy kit on display, valued at over 30 million yen. Something about it gets Gero talking naturally and with genuine personality, and he ends up having a surprisingly charming conversation with May all about the candy kit without even trying. May is impressed enough to award him 30 bonus points on the spot spot, and for the first time she feels a real sense of hope for what he might be capable of. A little while later, Mei draws Gero's attention to a strange-looking man sitting on the floor nearby, fidgeting away to himself, and she asks Gero what he makes of him. Gero's first instinct is that the man must either be homeless or dealing with some kind of mental health issue. But then a group of tourists suddenly spot the man and immediately flock around him in excitement. Mei explains that the man is none other than Mr. Shiratori, one of the most celebrated and well-known young painters in the entire country. She uses him as a living example to show Gero that people are generally drawn to others because of their unique talents and gifts. Mr. Shiratori might look and behave in a way that seems completely odd to a stranger, but his fans would not have him any other way because he has already won them over entirely through his extraordinary ability. Gero takes that on board, but tells her he does not think he has anything like that going for him. Mei tells him that he is wrong about that. She brings up what happened back with the handler, where he cleared out an entire room full of dangerous men and got her out of there all on his own. She tells him she has absolutely no doubt that something like that is a genuine part of his charm. With that said, she tells him to forget about dating apps and matchmaking parties because she believes the best way for him to find a partner is by helping people. She suggests things like rescuing hostages, protecting important people, and letting girls notice him while he does good work. Gero is surprised by this idea because he is a poison master and his usual job is to assassinate people. However, Mei explains that there is no rule that says he cannot also help others. Hearing this makes Gero start to think about it seriously. Later that night, the guards notice that a valuable piece of artwork is missing. They quickly assume that Haimkawa is responsible. The guards inform the ship's pilot, and he starts checking for any nearby boats that might have left the cruise ship. When he finds nothing, they conclude that Haimkawa must still be somewhere on board. What they do not realize is that Haimkawa is already far below sea level, moving toward land with her shark, Chomsky. She arrives near the shore and sees her teammates waving at her, so she believes she has escaped safely. Suddenly, a whirlpool forms and pulls her teammates in, catching her by surprise, and then a person in a white suit jumps down toward her. At the same time, Gero and Mei are at a buffet. Gero is now seriously thinking about the idea of saving people, so he asks Mei where he can find jobs like that. Mei shows him a website called Dark Nav, where different kinds of jobs are listed, including capturing criminals and stopping smugglers. She is surprised that Gero has never heard of it before, and Gero explains that he usually gets his work through brokers. Gero spends some time looking through the website until he finds a rescue mission involving Haimkawa. The report says that she has been captured by bandits who are demanding the return of artworks that law enforcement has taken in exchange for her release. Haimkawa is known by many as a famous thief, but the truth is different. Wealthy and cruel collectors often steal art from people who cannot defend themselves, and Haimkawa secretly returns those stolen pieces to their rightful owners. Because of this, she has loyal supporters. A fan club dedicated to her is the one that hired Gero to rescue her. Mei is not at all surprised that Gero is the only one who showed up for the job, since there would not be many people willing to take on something this high risk for such little pay, though she figures this might actually work in their favor, because with barely any competition around, it gives Gero the perfect opportunity to step up and be her knight in shining armor. Gero introduces himself as one of the poison masters, and the men who hired him are visibly stunned to find themselves in the presence of an actual poison master. Meanwhile, the kidnapper leans over to Haimkawa and taunts her, telling her he has never come across anyone as beautiful as her before and asking her to switch sides and join him. But Haimkawa refuses flat out, telling him that she only steals for causes she genuinely believes in and that her mission is to return every piece of artwork he has stolen back to the people it rightfully belongs to. One of the paintings he took belonged to a little girl whose mother had passed away, and Haimkawa once made that little girl a personal promise that she was going to steal it back for her no matter what. The kidnapper gets irritated hearing all of this and calls Ushio over, who grabs her by the throat and dumps water over her without a second thought. Meanwhile, Gero and Mei get the rescue mission underway and work their way through a mall. That is when they come around a corner and run straight into two guards armed with guns, but Gero steps right in front of her and drops both guards with a single split kick before they can do anything. Mei starts to think she should just hang back and sit the rest of the mission out, but Gero reaches down and helps her back up, telling her plainly that he needs her with him which is enough to give her the boost of confidence she needs to keep going. Meanwhile, Ushio continues to pour his ferrofluid over Himekawa, but the boss tells him to cut it out and go deal with the intruders who have just broken in, so Ushio heads off to take care of them. Back with Gero and Mei as they continue pushing forward through the ship. Gero starts quietly rehearsing the lines he plans to use on Himekawa when he finally gets to her. That is when they walk straight into another group of guards blocking their path, but Gero handles all of them with ease using his martial arts, casually taking each one down while continuing to practice his pickup lines out loud with Mei in between strikes. They both then enter an elevator together and go down to the lower area. At the same time, the boss aims a gun at Himekawa. At first, she thinks he is going to kill her in a weak way, but then he changes and points the gun at the painting instead. He tells her to obey everything he says, or he will destroy the painting. Himekawa immediately realizes it is the same painting she promised to return to a small girl. She cannot allow it to be damaged, so she agrees to follow his orders without resistance. Then suddenly, the boss's arms are blown off by an unknown force, and he becomes extremely scared and starts panicking. After that, a strange being appears from the wall, moves into his body, and burns him alive from inside. However, this is not actually happening in reality. It is only a hallucination created because of the poison that Gero had previously given him. Gero then walks forward calmly and introduces himself to Himekawa. He tells her that he is the master who has come to rescue her. Himekawa is shocked that a master personally came to save her. She also quickly tells Gero that she does not have enough money to pay him for this job, which catches him completely off guard because he did not plan what to say next after his introduction. Right after that, Mei enters the room and starts trying to remove the chains that are holding Himekawa, but suddenly, Ushio appears from behind and grabs Himekawa tightly, stopping her movement. In response to this, Gero immediately injects himself with an augmentation serum that increases his physical abilities many times over his normal limit. He then rushes straight toward Ushio, but she suddenly disappears from sight and reappears somewhere else, leaving Himekawa behind in the middle of the confusion. Because of this, Gero quickly throws Himekawa over toward Mei so she can keep her safe and out of danger. Ushio then attacks using water fists. The force of her attack is so strong that it breaks the floor beneath them and causes them both to fall and continue fighting on a lower level of the building. After that, Ushio quickly dashes toward Gero again, but instead of continuing to attack immediately, she suddenly apologizes to him for not introducing herself properly earlier. She then offers him her business card. She already knows that Gero is a poison master, and she asks him if he wants to settle the situation privately instead of fighting. Ushio explains that she is also a water master. She believes that if two masters fight seriously, the damage will be too large and will go far beyond what Gero is being paid for this job. Because of that, she offers him 10 times the amount his client originally promised if he agrees to leave Himekawa and walk away from the mission completely. Meanwhile, Mei is watching everything happening, and she is completely confused about the situation. At that moment, Gero's augmentation syringe rolls across the ground toward her. She notices that there is still some liquid left inside it and reaches out to take it, but Gero suddenly yells at her not to touch it. Ushio sees this reaction and immediately understands that the substance is not a normal serum, but actually a very dangerous poison. Ushio then explains that masters inherit modified bloodlines that are connected to their special abilities. In the case of poison masters, their bloodline strengthens their body when exposed to a lethal dose of poison. However, Gero explains that this is not the full truth. He adds that it is actually also a curse that forces poison masters to finish their target before their own body shuts down completely. Since Ushio is also a master, Gero assumes she must also have a modified bloodline as well, even though her water control ability looks almost like magic to him. However, Ushio does not respond to this assumption. Instead, she asks Gero once again whether he is willing to reach an agreement and settle things peacefully. When Gero refuses again, Ushio immediately begins attacking him. At first, the fight is going in her favor, and she is clearly overpowering him, but Gero quickly changes the situation by coating her glove with therma poison, which causes it to explode suddenly. That small opening gives Gero the chance he needs, and he follows up quickly with another attack that knocks Ushio to the ground. As Ushio slowly gets back up, she is shocked and confused about how Gero managed to hit her 3 times in a row at exactly the same point with millimeter level precision. Gero then speaks and says says that he is doing all of this for Himekawa. Even though they are strangers right now, he believes she might become very important to him in the future. Because of that, he is willing to risk his life completely on that possibility, even if it ends up killing him. Ushio hears what Gero says, and it makes her think that he has gone soft. Because of that, she immediately unleashes her Hell's Lashes modified bloodline and attacks him using high-pressure streams of water. The attacks come rapidly and with great force, but Gero manages to dodge all of them. However, during the exchange, Mei gets hit by one of the attacks, which causes Gero to become worried about her condition. As the fight continues, Himekawa asks Mei if she is okay and questions why she is going this far. Mei responds by saying that this is simply their job, and their main priority right now is to get her to safety. She tells Himekawa to stop worrying about them and just run away while she still can. However, Himekawa refuses to leave. She is not the type of person who runs away when things become dangerous. Instead, she asks Mei how she can help, and as they think about it, both of them notice the poison syringe lying nearby. Meanwhile, Gero is starting to get overwhelmed by Ushio. He has already used up all his needles and poisons, and without them, he cannot properly fight back. At the same time, Ushio's constant attacks make it difficult for him to get close enough to face her directly. In the middle of the battle, Gero's thoughts drift back to his childhood. He remembers being trained by the head of the Poison Clan. During that time, he was warned that no one must ever learn about the Poison Clan's modified bloodline. If anyone were to discover it for any reason, he must eliminate them without hesitation. Gero snaps out of the memory and refocuses on the fight. Just then, Himekawa suddenly drops down on top of him and presents the poison syringe to him. Gero reminds her that he is there to rescue her and tells her again to run away. However, Himekawa refuses and says she is not someone who wants to be saved like a helpless princess. Because of that, she is willing to fight and help him instead. Suddenly, Ushio uses her Hydra tentacles to grab Himekawa and pull her away. She mocks Himekawa for being foolish enough to come down and involve herself in the fight. At that moment, Gero stands up and firmly holds the syringe in his hand. Ushio immediately recognizes what it is and tells him to drop it right away. Gero lets the syringe fall to the ground. As soon as he does that, he rushes toward Ushio at incredible speed. While he sprints, she looks at the syringe and realizes it is empty. This makes her understand that Gero has already taken the poison dose. By the time she realizes this, it is already too late. Gero moves in and strikes her with a poisoned needle directly to the neck. The attack takes effect instantly, and Ushio collapses on the spot. After that, Gero catches Himekawa and holds her in his arms. However, as he does this, he suddenly realizes that his hands are in the no-touch zone. This causes him to panic, and he quickly looks up at Mei, asking for help. Shortly after, Ushio wakes up and sees Gero looking over her. Gero calmly explains her water technique and mentions that he has read about it many times in the Poison Clan's library. Ushio feels confused because she cannot understand why he chose not to kill her when he clearly had the chance to do so. Gero then explains that he came here to retrieve Himekawa, not to kill her. Now that he has defeated her, he believes that is enough to teach her a lesson, so she will not interfere with him again. As for the other kidnapper, Gero also decides not to kill him. Instead, he lets him go with a warning. This decision annoys Ushio, and she calls Gero soft for sparing them. Gero responds by saying that if anyone crosses him again, they will face his Thousand Torments toxin, making it clear that he is still dangerous if pushed too far. Mei then asks Himekawa if she is okay with how things turned out. Himekawa replies that it is fine with her because she does not plan on getting captured again in the first place. After that, she offers to give Gero and Mei a ride. They are both shocked and almost panic when they realize they will be riding on Himekawa's pet shark, Chomsky, as they head back. Sometime later, Himekawa visits Aegea and returns the painting of her mother. Aegea and her father are both happy and relieved to have it back. At the same time, the Himekawa fan club watches this moment through a camera and becomes emotional, finding the scene very touching. Meanwhile, Gero stands awkwardly in a corner, unsure of what to do. Himekawa calls him over because Aegea wants to thank him personally. Gero shuffles forward, and as Aegea thanks him, he begins to feel emotional. Himekawa also thanks Gero for saving her. She admits that when she first heard he was a poison master, she assumed he would be cold and heartless. However, she now sees that he is different, which causes Gero to blush slightly. Mei then speaks up and tells Gero that she never had the chance to properly thank him for paying for her brother's treatment. She shows him pictures pictures that her brother sent, showing his recovery progress. She expresses how grateful she is for what Gero has done. May points out that Gero has positively impacted many people's lives, even if he does not realize it. She tells him that he should accept the praise he is receiving. Hearing all of this makes Gero very emotional, and he quietly walks off toward the bathroom to let it all out. However, before he can stay there, the Heimkawa fan club calls him back to discuss his payment for the job. At that moment, Heimkawa speaks up and explains that they do not have enough money to pay him for his services. Instead, she says she is willing to offer anything else as compensation. Hearing this makes Gero visibly flustered. May then speaks up and suggests that the three of them should go out and celebrate. Later that evening, Gero and Heimkawa sit together awkwardly, waiting for May to arrive. However, May intentionally decides not to show up because she wants to leave Gero alone with Heimkawa and see if any kind of connection or spark can develop between them. She sends Gero a message, telling him that she will not be able to make it after all and that he will have to handle things on his own. When Gero reads the message, he nearly panics as he realizes that it will just be him and Heimkawa for the entire night. Heimkawa then takes Gero to a shark convention. It is very clear that this kind of event is not Gero's style, but Heimkawa is clearly enjoying herself and having a great time. After that, they sit down for dinner. Meanwhile, May is secretly watching them from a distance. However, she quickly realizes that Gero has already figured out that she set up this entire thing. May remembers that she had previously told Gero to always compliment a girl on what she is wearing, but instead of doing that, Gero awkwardly comments that Heimkawa's necklace looks like an old keepsake. This leaves both May and Heimkawa completely speechless. Gero then tries several different ways to start a conversation with Heimkawa, but every attempt fails and becomes more awkward than the last. May watches everything unfold and realizes that the situation is turning into a complete mess. She decides that she has no choice but to step in and help. She connects her phone to a nearby monitor and sends signals to Gero, guiding him on what to say. She encourages him to start small talk by asking Heimkawa about her childhood. The restaurant manager notices what May is doing and tells her to stop, but she quickly rizzes him into staying quiet and letting her continue. Back at the table, Heimkawa notices that Gero has barely touched his food and asks him about it. Gero explains that because he was trained from a young age to become a poison master, he cannot safely eat food that he didn't prepare himself. He says that since he was a child, he has always cooked his own meals and eaten alone. Heimkawa says she understands that feeling to some extent. She explains that she was also alone for most of her childhood. She didn't have a family and had no friends at the orphanage where she grew up. One day, a wealthy man who was close to death decided to adopt her. However, it was not because he cared about her personally, but because he realized he had no one to inherit his wealth and legacy and became afraid. Because of that, she ended up inheriting the Heimkawa name and a large fortune. She explains that she could have lived her entire life without ever needing to work. However, one day she discovered a large collection of beautiful art pieces hidden away inside his mansion. When she investigated further, she found out that those artworks had been obtained illegally. She ends up returning all the artwork to their rightful owners, and doing that takes a large amount of money from Heimkawa's fortune, leaving her broke. Because of that, she now has to work a part-time job 5 days a week just to survive. After hearing this, Gero thinks back to how good it felt when people thanked him earlier. He realizes that Heimkawa has been doing things like that her entire life. Because of that, he tells her that she is really cool for what she has done. Hearing this, Heimkawa begins to tear up slightly as she looks at him because it is the first time anyone has ever complimented her in that way. The atmosphere between them becomes more serious, and May signals to Gero, encouraging him to go ahead and ask Heimkawa to be his girlfriend. Gero gathers his courage, but instead of asking her out, he asks her to be his friend. This surprises both Heimkawa and May. Heimkawa laughs a little and says she really thought he was about to ask her out. Gero admits that he did want to, but explains that they don't really know each other yet. He says that even though he may have made a good impression earlier, there are dark parts of himself that he is not proud of and does not want to hide forever. He looks at Heimkawa seriously and tells her that he wants her to get to know who he really is. He says that if she can accept him fully after that, then he will properly ask her out. He believes that this is the first step toward the kind of marriage and future he wants. May watches all of this happen and is left completely speechless by how things turned out. Heimkawa understands what Gero means explains she agrees that starting as friends is fine with her. However, she also tells him that winning her heart will not be easy. After that, they exchange numbers and Gero walks her over to her car. Before Himekawa gets into the car, she mentions that since he cannot eat food made by others, she hopes that next time he will cook lunch for them. As he is standing there, Mei suddenly appears behind him and tells him that he has been assigned a new job as a bodyguard for the only daughter of a powerful CEO. Gero reacts immediately and jumps back, thinking that taking this job would feel like he is cheating on Himekawa. Mei corrects him and explains that it is not cheating because he and Himekawa are only friends at the moment. She also adds that meeting more people, especially different kinds of girls, will help him gain more experience and better understand relationships. Gero sees the logic in that, so he ends up agreeing. A while later, Gero begins his job as a bodyguard and takes on a new assignment. His job is to protect the CEO's daughter, Shori, while also accompanying her to a college party. Even though he fully understands that his responsibility is to keep an eye on Shori at all times and make sure nothing happens to her, he starts to feel a little nervous because this is the very first time he has ever gone to a college party. It turns out that Shori is just as socially awkward as Gero is. She struggles to approach people, make conversation, and fit in with the others around her. Because of that, many of the students at the party begin to think she is a weirdo, which only makes things more uncomfortable for her. The scene then shifts back to the time when Gero was first introduced to Shori by her uncle, Mitsuhiko. Mitsuhiko explains that he wants to hire Gero as a bodyguard for Shori, who is set to begin university this spring. However, he believes it would be much better if Gero handled the job quietly and without standing out too much, so no one would suspect that Shori was being protected. Mitsuhiko then goes on to explain the family situation in more detail. He says that Shiori's father built his massive company from the ground up within a single generation, creating a powerful business empire through his own hard work. Unfortunately, he passed away last year after suffering from illness before his death. However, he left behind a will stating that once Shori became old enough, she would inherit the company and become the next CEO. But that decision has created conflict within the family. Mitsuhiko explains that his older sister, Fudy, believes the company should belong to her instead. She rejects the will and is doing everything she can to make sure that she becomes the one who inherits control of the company. Mitsuhiko admits that he does not know exactly what Fudy is planning, but he has heard disturbing rumors. According to what he has learned, she may have hired someone who uses strange and unusual techniques in order to assassinate Shori. Because of that possibility, Mitsuhiko says he does not want to take even the smallest risk with Shiori's safety. That is why he specifically chose to hire the top member of the Poison Clan, believing Gero is the best person possible for the job. Not long after that, Mei arrives and gives Gero a fake student identification card. She tells him that from this point onward, his cover identity will be Oshima, a regular third-year university student. Gero accepts this new role without much complaint and seems perfectly fine with it. Just then, Shiori timidly speaks up and says that one thing she has always wanted to experience during university life is attending a drinking party like other students do. Gero immediately rejects the idea and tells her that it sounds far too dangerous. However, Shiori responds by giving him an innocent puppy dog eyes. The moment Gero sees that expression, all of his resistance disappears and he instantly agrees to let her go. At the drinking party, it is time for everyone to introduce themselves one by one. When it becomes Shiori's turn, she nervously stands up and introduces herself in a stiff and uncomfortable way. Instead of helping her fit in, it only makes everyone there think she is even stranger than they already did. Next, it is Gero's turn. He decides that this is his chance to prove that even a poison master can become the life of the party. Wanting to leave a strong impression, he confidently introduces himself and then immediately tries to amaze everyone by chugging 8 glasses of beer at the same time. Mei watches the whole thing from a distance and can already tell that this is going to end badly. After Gero finishes drinking all 8 glasses, he clenches the liquid in his stomach and then pulls it back out through his mouth in the shape of a snake by using a water-absorbent polymer trick. He believes this performance will at least earn him some applause or admiration. Instead, everyone who witnesses it is completely disgusted and unsettled by what they just saw. Trying to move past that awkward moment, one of the students notices that one last person still has not introduced himself yet. A blonde guy sitting quietly in the corner then slowly stands stands up. He calmly introduces himself as Naruko and says nothing more. The student asks him what year he is in and what major he studies, but Naruko simply replies that none of that matters. He says the only thing that matters is that he was able to meet all of them in this moment. After saying that, he casually sits back down. The girls at the party immediately find him attractive and rush toward him, asking for his phone number and trying to get his attention. Watching this happen makes Gero realize that there are levels to this. After the party ends, they all head back home. Gero reflects on how badly the night went for both of them, so he asks Shiori why she forced herself to attend in the first place. He says he understands that she is set to inherit a company and assumes she wanted to improve her communication skills, but he is still curious about her real reason. Shiori explains that wanting to go to the party was not actually about the company at all. She says that right before her father passed away, he told her to stop being so timid and to live life to the fullest because life is much more enjoyable that way. She then tells Gero and Mei that she knows all she has to do is take the first step and people will eventually like her. Even so, she cannot stop herself from worrying and hesitating. Shiori also admits that she never got the chance to ask her father why he chose her to inherit the company. Because of that, she wants to become stronger, improve herself, and reach the point where she can laugh away her fear instead of being controlled by it. But Gero quickly gives her a reality check and reminds her that there is still someone out there trying to kill her. Even after saying that, he also tells her that she is free to do whatever she wants, because no matter what happens or how dangerous things become, he is going to protect her. Hearing those words from him immediately makes Shiori blush. From a distance, Naruko is secretly watching the two of them while giving a report to Fudy. This reveals that he is the assassin Fudy hired in order to eliminate Shiori. The next day, Naruko is calmly enjoying a massage when Fudy suddenly comes over and begins scolding him for taking too long to finish disposing of Shiori. She is clearly frustrated that the task is still incomplete and keeps complaining to him. Naruko becomes irritated by her constant nagging, so he uses his special ability to interrupt her thought process. Once her mind settles down and she becomes calm again, he casually tells her that he is going to handle everything himself. Later that afternoon during class, Mei does not understand why Gero is even bothering to pay attention to the lesson, since he is not actually a real student. Gero simply tells her that he is finding the experience enjoyable because everything about this school life is still completely new to him. Outside the classroom, Naruko is seen meditating with intense focus. After a while, he activates his sound technique, which creates a series of high-frequency resonations. The waves spread through the area and cause the entire classroom to experience extreme gravity, forcing everyone's heads down onto their desks under the pressure. At the same time, part of the classroom's ceiling suddenly breaks apart and begins falling directly toward Shiori. Without wasting a second, Gero injects himself with his enhancement poison, which greatly boosts his physical abilities. With his body strengthened, he rushes forward and manages to save Shiori at the very last second before the debris can crush her. Naruko watches this from outside and is surprised that Gero was able to protect Shiori even under such terrible and unfavorable conditions. He recalls that right before Gero sprang into action, he injected himself with some kind of substance that instantly enhanced his body and movements. Naruko concludes that only someone extremely skilled could perform something like that so effectively. Because of that, he believes the only person capable of doing such a thing must be a poison master. At the same time, Gero carefully examines the strange attack that was carried out on the classroom. After thinking it over, he comes to the conclusion that the only type of person capable of causing such an attack would be a sound master. After that, they regroup together in the hallway, and Gero informs Shiori that whatever just happened was clearly an attempt to kill her. Mei hears this and immediately starts wondering whether they should cancel the camping trip for safety reasons. Gero says that decision will likely depend on what Mitsuhiko wants, though deep down Gero assumes he will probably refuse to let the trip happen after such a dangerous attack. However, to his surprise, when Shiori asks about it, Mitsuhiko actually agrees to let her go. He says that she has been looking forward to this camping trip for a long time, so he does not want to take that away from her now. But once they leave, what they do not realize is that Mitsuhiko is being controlled by Naruko's technique. A few moments later, everyone boards the bus and gets ready to leave. While riding on the bus, Gero thinks carefully about the assassin targeting Shiori and realizes that if he truly truly wants to solve this problem, he will need to confront the assassin directly instead of only reacting to attacks. Shortly after, they arrive at the camping location. The moment they get there, Gero immediately starts trying to impress some of the girls by showing off his cooking skills. His food and confidence begin drawing quite a lot of attention from the group. At the same time, Shiori is struggling to meet anyone or join conversations at the event, so she starts thinking of a way to draw some attention to herself. That is when she comes up with the idea of dressing up and performing some cool and funny magic tricks for everyone. Her little performance ends up pleasing the crowd, and the students around her begin enjoying themselves and paying attention to her. At the end of the day, Gero praises Shiori for how well she handled the magic trick performance. Shiori shyly explains that it was just a small skill she learned from being around her father's business world. But just then, one of the students suddenly speaks up and asks everyone if they have ever heard of the curse of Chladni. It is clear that nobody understands the story, so he begins explaining it. He says that this place used to be a village, and the locals made offerings to their nearby deity all the way until World War II. According to the tale, once every 2 years, whenever the crops failed, the villagers would choose the youngest child in the village and lock them inside a nearby shrine as a sacrifice. He continues by saying that after the war, they abandoned those customs. However, for some unknown reason, a series of natural disasters then struck the village. Even though nearly 1,000 people once lived there, it did not take long before every last one of them was wiped out. The group becomes tense listening to the story, but it then turns out that everything was just a scary tale the student made up on the spot, so everyone relaxes and loosens up again. After that, the girls decide to play a game together and begin wondering where Naruko is, since nobody has seen him in quite a while. Meanwhile, Naruko is actually moving quickly and deeply through the forest. He has already finished setting multiple traps meant specifically for Shiori, and from the look on his face alone, it is obvious that he is completely confident he will come out on top. Meanwhile, the group decides to have more fun together by going to a spooky shrine. To make it more exciting, they set up a photo stand along the path so they can take pictures and keep the memory. After arriving, they split into smaller groups, and Gero ends up walking with Shiori. As they move forward, Gero remembers what Mei told him earlier. She explained that you could make a girl think she likes you by putting her in a scary situation, so her fast heartbeat feels like love. Gero understood what she meant, but he felt uneasy about how much she seemed to enjoy the idea. While they walk, Shiori begins to apologize to Gero for coming to the party. She says that if she had just stayed at home, his job would have been much easier, and he would not have needed to come out here and deal with all this. Gero tells her not to worry about it. He explains that a place like this actually reduces the types of attacks they might face, which makes things a bit safer in some ways. Then he asks her to promise him something. He tells her to do her best to enjoy herself. Moments like this do not happen often, and he believes it would be a waste to let fear ruin it, even if someone is trying to kill her. Hearing this makes Shiori feel touched, so she decides to seal the memory by taking out her selfie stick and takes a picture with him. After taking the photo, she looks at it and freezes in shock. Gero's face in the picture looks like a strange spirit. Confused, she quickly looks around and realizes that Gero is no longer beside her. Panic sets in, and she starts running, trying to find him. After a moment, she sees him standing near a log, but when he turns around, his body begins to change into a dark, unnatural spirit. The creature then starts chasing her, but she manages to get away for a while and locks herself in a nearby building. The spirit somehow manages to appear right in front of Shiori again, cutting off her path completely, and it slowly begins walking toward her step by step, making her feel even more terrified than before. Just as it gets close enough, a light suddenly shines over its face, and it is revealed to be her dad. This completely confuses her, because she knows for a fact that her dad is dead and should not be standing here in front of her. Her legs give out from the shock, and she falls to the ground. Her dad then calmly sits down on the floor in front of her, acting as if nothing is wrong, and offers her a drink in a very casual way. Shiori, still confused, asks how she is even able to talk to him right now. In response, her dad explains that she is currently hovering between life and death, existing in a strange state as an offering to Lord Chladni. Hearing this, Shiori quickly takes the chance to ask something that has been on her mind for a long time. She asks him why he chose her to be the successor of the company in the first place. However, before he can give her a proper answer, his his face suddenly splits in two, and another face emerges from within it. This new face speaks in a colder tone and tells her that he deeply regrets ever making her the successor in the first place. Those words hit Shiori hard and break her heart instantly. Before she can even react properly, a red design spreads over her eyes, showing that she is being brainwashed and losing control of her thoughts. The figure continues speaking, telling Shiori that she will always be a failure in his eyes and that she will never live up to his expectations. Then he shifts her attention toward a nearby rope and tells her that it would be better for her to just end her miserable life by using the rope. Under the influence of his manipulation, Shiori gradually starts to believe his words and falls into a dangerously hopeless state. At this point, it becomes clear that the father she saw earlier was not real at all, but actually the same spirit from before that had taken on his appearance to deceive her. Just before she goes through with it, Shiori suddenly remembers a moment from her past when she was able to make people happy. That memory gives her a burst of emotion, and she loudly says that she wants to be able to do that again and make people smile more often. Acting on that feeling, she suddenly runs toward a set of doors nearby and jumps out over a cliff without thinking it through. Almost immediately after jumping, she realizes how dumb that decision was as she begins falling straight down. While she is falling, she starts to think about all the people who have protected her and helped her, and she realizes that if she dies here, she will be letting all of them down. In a desperate attempt to survive, she quickly reaches into her backpack and pulls out her umbrella. For a short moment, it manages to slow her fall slightly, giving her a bit of hope, but not long after. The umbrella breaks apart, leaving her falling again with nothing to stop her. Right before she becomes a pancake, Gero suddenly appears at the last second. He quickly throws down a layer of water-absorbent polymer beneath them and then jumps in to catch her while landing safely on top of it. Shiori looks up at Gero and feels genuinely relieved and happy that he came to save her in time. Meanwhile, Gero quickly realizes exactly what the assassin has been trying to do this entire time. They cannot kill Shiori directly because that would immediately make them a suspect. So instead, they are trying to create a situation where it looks like Shiori either took her own life or died in what seems like an accident. Not long after that realization, Naruko arrives at the scene with a calm smirk on his face. Gero comments on how clever Naruko's trick was, acknowledging that it worked perfectly. He explains that the moment Shiori took that picture at the photo stand, Naruko used a shockwave attack on him that scrambled his sense of direction and separated him from Shiori, making it easier to target her alone. Gero then tells Shiori that they cannot fight Naruko from their current position and that they need to run away as quickly as possible. However, Shiori tells him that she cannot even stand properly right now because her knees have completely given out from everything that just happened. With no other choice, she awkwardly wraps herself around Gero for support, which makes him blush slightly from the sudden closeness. Gero then takes out a dose of his augment serum and injects himself with it to boost his ability, and immediately after that, he starts running into the forest while carrying Shiori with him. Despite all of this, Naruko does not seem bothered in the slightest. Instead, he casually pulls out a massage chair, sits down comfortably, and begins to relax as if he is not in any rush at all. While Gero and Shiori are moving through the forest, Naruko uses his mind whisper ability to interfere with their thoughts and disturb their minds from a distance. Gero quickly realizes what is happening and immediately hands Shiori a pair of earplugs, telling her to use them to block out the sound. However, Shiori tells him that she already has something better. She pulls out a pair of cute noise-canceling headphones. She puts one on herself and gives the other pair to Gero, allowing both of them to block out the outside noise completely. However, Naruko tells them that trying to block out the sound was actually their biggest mistake. He explains that when the sound continues to build up without release, it becomes powerful enough to tear through skin itself. Almost immediately, one of the sound attacks moves toward Gero, but he reacts quickly and manages to dodge it with sharp movement, which briefly surprises Naruko. Even so, Naruko quickly calms himself down because he knows that Gero was never the real target in the first place. At that moment, Shiori's eyes are covered again by the same red design, showing that her mind has been taken over once more. Without warning, she jumps off Gero and begins running deeper into the forest on her own. After running for a while, she suddenly stops as she begins to see a hallucination forming in front of her. The figure takes the shape of her uncle, Mitsuhiko. He looks at her coldly and tells her that he sees her as nothing more than a bird burden, someone who only causes problems. His words cut deeply into her, and her heart begins to break under the weight of them. In reality, it is Naruko speaking through the hallucination, using her pain against her. Just as the situation gets worse, Gero suddenly appears out of nowhere and kicks the fake Mitsuhiko in the face with force, knocking the illusion apart instantly. Without wasting time, he turns to Shiori and uses a toxin to put her to sleep, knowing that her staying awake in this state will only cause more harm to her. Naruko watches this happen from a distance and is not surprised. He admits to himself that someone like Gero, who is skilled with poison, would be capable of overcoming his hallucination tactics. Gero then speaks out loud toward Naruko, making it clear that he understands how his abilities work. He explains that Naruko's illusions and brainwashing reach deep into a person's mind and pull out their most painful and traumatic memories, turning them into weapons against them. He acknowledges that this makes Shiori an easy target, but he also makes it clear that Naruko is underestimating her. Gero firmly states that Shiori is stronger than he thinks and that she will be able to overcome this. At the same time, Mei is moving through the area while tracking both Gero and Shiori. She eventually comes over a nearby fence and spots them, but she is caught off guard by the position Shiori is wrapped around Gero in. Putting that aside, Gero quickly tells Mei to take Shiori and get her to safety as soon as possible. He understands that given how the situation has gone so far, Naruko must already be thinking of a new way to kill him, especially since his plans have already failed twice. Because of that, Gero decides that he will go and deal with Naruko himself. Meanwhile, Naruko is thinking exactly as Gero expected. He plans to kill Gero first and then go after Shiori afterward, and he even seems excited by the idea. Naruko considers the situation and realizes that Gero's poison needles will not be effective if he cannot get close enough to use them. Because of this, he becomes curious about what Gero plans to do now, especially since he is making sure to keep his distance at all times. Gero suddenly charges forward into the forest, moving quickly as he tries to cut through Naruko's hidden trap wires using his poison liquid. However, when the liquid makes contact, he is shocked to see that it does not work at all and instead simply bounces off the wires without cutting them. Naruko explains that his strings vibrate at an extremely high speed, so there is no way for any liquid to properly touch or affect them. Because of that, Gero's poison liquid cannot cut through them at all. After saying this, Naruko decides that it is time to end everything. He uses his modified bloodline technique and summons a giant spirit golem, which appears immediately and starts attacking Gero without hesitation. Gero reacts quickly and manages to dodge the golem's attacks, avoiding being crushed. However, in the middle of the fight, Naruko suddenly shudders in shock. He realizes that something is wrong because his golem has suddenly stopped moving. Confused, he immediately jumps out of his bath barrel and begins sprinting toward the location. This situation makes no sense to him because he never felt any of his wires being cut or disturbed. When Naruko finally arrives at the scene, he sees what happened. The golem has been completely restrained by thick tree vines and branches that have wrapped tightly around its body. Gero then explains calmly that he used a special type of plant medicine that causes the surrounding vegetation to grow rapidly and uncontrollably. He points out that Naruko's technique has a weakness because the trees and plants are growing so quickly. Naruko cannot play precise notes on his strings, which disrupts his control. Even after hearing this, Naruko does not panic at all. Instead, he calmly explains that fear always exists deep inside people's minds, waiting quietly. He says that he has already seen those hidden fears within others, and all he needs to do is make them grow stronger. Not long after that, the students from the trip notice the giant golem in the distance, and they immediately become terrified by what they see. That sudden wave of fear is exactly what Naruko needs. He uses it to take control of their minds and makes them believe in the curse of Chladni. The leader of the tour suddenly speaks up and declares that they must offer a child as a sacrifice to calm Chladni's anger. Since there is no actual child with them, they decide that the youngest person present will be used instead. The students then begin taking out their IDs and checking their birth dates one by one. It quickly becomes clear that Shiori is the youngest among them. As soon as they realize this, Shiori and Mei immediately start running away from the group. The other students, now under Naruko's control, begin shouting for them to come back, insisting that sacrificing Shiori is the only way to appease Chladni. Meanwhile, deeper in the forest, Naruko calmly cuts some wood and uses uses his strings to quickly form a violin. Seeing this, Gero immediately prepares himself because he can tell that Naruko is about to use his modified bloodline increment. However, Naruko was just bluffing the entire time as he suddenly hurls the violin straight at Gero and immediately takes off running without hesitation. There is still one final thing Naruko needs to find before he goes back to fight Gero again, and once he manages to find it, he is completely certain that the battle will be decided in his favor. Gero quickly chases after Naruko as he glides across the strings of his violin as though they are pathways under his feet. While moving, Naruko tells Gero that even if Shiori is able to escape and successfully become CEO, her life will only end up becoming even worse than before, because her relatives will reject her completely and other selfish people will constantly try to tear her down and use her for their own gain. He admits that Shiori does have real potential deep inside her, but in order for her to actually reach that potential, she is going to have to work her butt off without stopping. However, Naruko also believes that in the world of the strong, people who are not strong right now simply cannot survive as they are. This belief makes him remember his childhood days back at the dojo where he trained alongside his brother who always worked extremely hard and kept putting in extra effort to improve himself. But Naruko still ended up beating him up easily because of how naturally gifted and talented he was compared to him. Gero then responds back to Naruko, telling him that although Shiori started off as a very weak person, she has already begun to overcome her fears step by step, and he strongly believes that this is the first important step for her to truly become strong in the future. But Naruko is not even paying attention to Jiro's speech because at that exact moment he finally finds what he has been looking for all along, which is a hole in the ground filled with phytoncides. These phytoncides are basically healing compounds that trees release into the air, so when they gather together in one concentrated place like this, it becomes the perfect natural healing spot for Naruko to recover in. Naruko's Sound Master technique is not exactly designed for hand-to-hand combat, so in order to produce sound that will properly hook and trap his enemy, he needs to always be in peak physical condition without any weakness at all. Naruko then jumps into the pit and starts inhaling the phytoncides, taking deep breaths as he tries to fully absorb them into his body. After that, he activates his modified bloodline increment technique, preparing his body for the next stage of the fight. But at that exact moment, he suddenly realizes something is wrong. What he inhaled was not phytoncides at all. It was actually poison gas disguised as healing air. Gero somehow figured out what Naruko needed and set the entire situation up as a trap from the very beginning, carefully manipulating everything around him. Naruko refuses to give up even after realizing this. He quickly compresses his diaphragm and forcefully expels the poison gas from his body by spitting it out with intense pressure. However, it is already too late at that point. Gero suddenly swoops in, grabs Naruko's face using a water-absorbent polymer material in his hand, and then delivers a heavy punch straight into Naruko's stomach. The impact is so strong that it knocks Naruko completely unconscious. As Naruko lies on the ground, he is fully aware in his fading consciousness that he has just been defeated. Even so, he still smirks, because in his mind he knows there is no way to save Shiori anymore. According to his belief, the hysteria cannot be stopped under any circumstances, no matter what anyone does. Meanwhile, the brainwashed tour group is still searching desperately, but cannot find Shiori anywhere. After a long search with no results, they finally admit that they are out of options and completely give up. They decide that instead of stopping, they will now sacrifice whoever is the youngest person they can find after Shiori is gone. Shiori and Mei are then shown hiding deep inside the forest, staying out of sight and trying not to be discovered. Mei thinks it is finally time for them to leave the forest and escape while they still can, but Shiori thinks otherwise and strongly disagrees. She wants to go back instead because she knows that even though she managed to escape, the group will simply target and sacrifice another innocent person in her place. She then looks Mei directly in the eye and tells her that she already has a plan. The scene then shifts to the tour guide zombies, who are preparing to sacrifice another person in Shiori's place as planned. But that is when Shiori suddenly arrives at the scene, dressed in a witch outfit that immediately catches everyone's attention. She then demonstrates a strange fire-based power in front of them, and boldly tells them she will be able to use it to exorcise Lord Chaldney and end everything. However, this entire act was carefully orchestrated by both Shiori and Mei from the very beginning. The tour guide group group even believes her story for a short moment and starts to hesitate. But then one girl suddenly speaks up and loudly says Shiori is lying and only making things up because she does not want to be sacrificed herself. The others quickly turn against Shiori after hearing this and begin calling her a liar. They then demand that she prove it if she is truly capable of what she claims. Shiori is already starting to feel overwhelmed by the pressure and fear building up inside her. But that is when Mei suddenly appears right behind her and signals with her eyes that she should not worry. Shiori then follows through with their plan and uses her flame party tricks to fully capture everyone's attention and make them focus only on her. At the perfect timing, Mei signals Gero to release his poison flame gas directly onto the Chaldni golem at the exact right moment. Gero follows through without hesitation by leaping into the air and unleashing the attack, burning the golem down completely. This sudden destruction causes the hysteria spell to be lifted from all of them, breaking its control over the group instantly. After that, Shiori calmly tells them that Lord Chaldni has now been completely defeated. She then suggests that they should all sit down together and build a campfire. Meanwhile, Naruko is still lying on the ground, slowly realizing that he has been completely defeated by Gero. However, Gero corrects him and tells him that the one who actually defeated him was Shiori, who is already in the process of overcoming her own weakness and growing beyond it. Naruko has always believed that anyone who is weak enough to lose in battle should be killed without hesitation. So he is genuinely shocked when he sees Gero simply turning away and walking off without finishing him off. Before leaving, Gero explains that killing people does not come with his job description, and it is not something he is required to do. He then suggests that Naruko should try opening up to someone about his trauma surrounding weakness, because there is far more to life than being trapped in that kind of mindset and philosophy. Gero then meets up with the girls afterward, and they are visibly relieved and happy to see that he has returned safely without any serious injuries. The next morning, the rest of the students wake up feeling confused and with strong headaches, claiming they all had strange dreams about Lord Chaldni and Shiori being a witch who could control fire. Shiori does not want to deal with explaining any of it, so she simply changes the topic and calmly tells them that breakfast will be ready very soon. If someone takes the time to observe her closely, they will notice that her social skills have improved significantly compared to when she first arrived in this place, as she now speaks more naturally and confidently with others. Shortly after, it is time for everyone to leave, so Mitsuhiko arrives in style, making a dramatic entrance, and Gero and the others are transported away in helicopters. While seated inside, Shiori thanks Gero for everything he has done for her and gently tries to pet him. This catches Gero completely off guard, causing him to jolt backward in surprise. Shiori then explains that this is just a small habit she picked up whenever she praises someone she respects or appreciates. It turns out Gero is actually into that kind of affectionate behavior, so he allows her to continue patting him, and Mei quietly records the entire moment on camera without interrupting. Meanwhile, Fudy is seen completely crashing out after hearing that Naruko failed to finish off Shiori. She has already hired another hitman to take care of Shiori, but Gero arrives at the exact moment and instantly takes the hitman out without any difficulty. Fudy starts panicking, thinking that Shiori has brought a poison master along with her in order to take revenge against her. However, instead of attacking, Shiori calmly bows before Fudy and begs her to train her and teach her everything she knows about the family business and how everything works. Fudy is hesitant at first and does not know how to respond to this unexpected request. But then she remembers Shiori's father's dying wish, which was to look after Shiori and train her properly if she ever shows real potential and determination. The look in Shiori's eyes right now is exactly what he had described back then, so Fudy eventually agrees to train her. Shiori is happy to hear this decision, but by the time she turns around to look back for Gero and Mei, they are already gone without saying goodbye. Gero is then seen carrying Mei on his back while performing unnecessary and flashy Parker movements across the buildings. Mei asks him why he left so suddenly without even getting Shiori's phone number, but Gero responds by saying that based on the time he spent with Shiori, he can clearly see that she still has a long journey ahead of her and is not yet ready for marriage or anything serious like that. Hearing this makes Mei realize just how responsible and mature Gero actually is when it comes to reading people and situations. They arrive on the ground shortly after and are about to cross the road, but that is when Shiori suddenly rides in on a bike, stopping right in front of them. She says she does not want to say goodbye just yet, so she asks to have one last dinner with both of them before everything ends. They both agree, so later that night, the three of them meet up for drinks in a relaxed setting. At first, Mei thought this would be the perfect chance for Gero to finally make progress and get closer to Shiori romantically, but both of them are so awkward around each other that they cannot even manage to have a proper conversation. Mei quickly realizes how bad this situation is, because if it continues like this, the two of them will slowly drift apart and lose whatever connection they have built. She makes up her mind to intervene, but at that moment Gero suddenly speaks up and tells Shiori that he has a party trick he wants to show her. At first, Mei expects it to be something embarrassing like his previous attempts, but to her surprise, this time the trick is actually impressive and visually beautiful, as he uses his ability to make several beautiful flowers descend gently from the sky. Shiori is genuinely impressed because these are her favorite flowers in the world. Shiori then tells Gero that she also has a party trick she would like to show him in return, and just like that, the two of them begin interacting more naturally and bonding on a deeper level than they ever have before. By the end of the night, Mei has already fallen asleep from exhaustion, while Gero and Shiori are still deeply engaged in conversation. Their time together brings out a lot of Shiori's hidden emotions, and she is just about to confess her feelings to Gero when Mitsuhiko suddenly arrives with a horse-drawn carriage and tells Shiori to get in because it is time for her to go home immediately. They both realize that the moment has been completely interrupted, but before leaving, Shiori quickly asks Gero to add her as a friend. After he does so, she leaves in the carriage feeling both nervous and extremely happy that she was successfully able to get Gero's contact information. Meanwhile, Gero starts to wonder whether Shiori is truly interested in him romantically or if she is simply being friendly. Mei can already tell what is going on, but she simply tells Gero to focus on developing their friendship for now instead of overthinking it. Mei then points out that they need to begin their next operation on Sunday, but Gero says he cannot make it on that day because he will be attending a friend's wedding. Gero explains that the person getting married is actually the bug master, Toshiki. Toshiki is an old friend of his, so it only makes sense for him to attend the wedding and show his support on such an important day. Mei takes one look at Toshiki's picture and immediately decides that she wants absolutely nothing to do with him because of how scary he looks. However, before she can walk away, Gero releases one of Toshiki's butterflies toward her. The butterfly lands near her and formally delivers an invitation to the wedding on Toshiki's behalf, which catches Mei completely off guard and surprises her. Gero then points out that he literally has nothing suitable to wear for such a fancy event, so he is going to need Mei's help picking out clothes and preparing for the wedding properly. After hearing that, Mei agrees to come along. She also reminds Gero that weddings are usually filled with lots of women and social opportunities, so this could actually be a good chance for him to meet some girls and possibly get closer to someone. A few days later, the two of them finally arrive at the wedding venue, and both of them are immediately impressed by just how luxurious and fancy the entire place looks. Before they can spend any more time admiring the scenery and decorations, a strange man suddenly appears out of nowhere and launches several needles directly into Gero's face at incredible speed. The sudden attack causes Gero to collapse straight onto the ground, making the situation look extremely serious. At first, Mei is completely shocked and honestly thinks that Gero might actually be dead after taking that attack directly to the face. However, Gero casually wakes up shortly afterward like nothing happened and introduces the strange needle-throwing man to Mei as Tsunagi, the Needle Master. Not long after that, Tsunagi's children run over to him excitedly and start asking him to take them to Disneyland someday. Tsunagi calmly agrees to take them there, and seeing this softer and more caring side of him makes both Gero and Mei acknowledge that despite his strange personality and dangerous skills, he is actually a really good father to his kids. Tsunagi then turns his attention toward Mei and immediately assumes that she is Gero's marriage advisor. Hearing that makes Mei suddenly perk up in surprise because she cannot believe he was able to figure that out so quickly. Shortly after that, the wedding ceremony finally begins, and Toshiki arrives in style while carrying his bride, Anna, in his arms. After they land, the priest begins going through all the formal wedding procedures, and while the guests quietly watch everything unfold. As Gero watches watches the ceremony continue, he still finds it hard to believe that someone like Toshiki is actually getting married. Seeing this moment causes Gero to think back to the very first time he met Toshiki years ago. Back then, the younger Gero had just completed an assassination job, and while he was on his way back, he unexpectedly ran into Toshiki for the first time. At first, Gero assumed that Toshiki had come looking for a fight or confrontation, but Toshiki quickly told him that he had the wrong idea because he was actually just there to sit down and have a drink with him. Toshiki was fully aware that Gero was still underage at the time, so instead of offering him alcohol, he casually offered him apple juice instead. Mei then snaps Gero out of his flashback and tells him to focus because the ceremony is now moving on to the part where they explain how Toshiki first met Anna. Apparently, Anna nearly fell off a cliff while rock climbing one day, but luckily Toshiki happened to be nearby and managed to save her before she could fall to her death. When Gero hears this story, he's not really surprised because he always knew Toshiki to be the kind of person who would end up saving someone in such a dramatic way. The ceremony continues smoothly after that, and while watching everything, Gero quietly asks Mei if he will ever be able to pull off a marriage as perfect and beautiful as this one someday. Mei confidently tells him that he will definitely be able to make something like this happen, especially because he has her supporting him. Not long after that, the wedding ceremony officially comes to an end, and all of the guests begin celebrating happily together. But what they don't know is that a group of bad guys are secretly watching the wedding from far away while preparing to launch an attack. The only person who manages to sense that something is wrong is Gero. The moment he notices the danger, he suddenly gets up from his chair and immediately rushes out while carrying one of Toshiki's spiders with him, completely shocking Mei in the process. Meanwhile, the attackers continue preparing to strike Toshiki and Anna during the celebration, but their leader fails to notice that his own men are quietly being taken down one after another without making any noise. By the time the leader finally realizes that something is wrong, it is already too late because Gero is suddenly standing right behind him with a massive spider web already spread out. However, the leader does not panic at all. Instead, he actually becomes slightly excited and immediately sets off several explosive cannons aimed directly at Gero. The explosion is extremely powerful and destructive, filling the entire area with smoke and debris. Because of how intense the blast is, the leader simply assumes that Gero must have been killed instantly. Seeing the destruction makes him start thinking back to how he even ended up living this kind of life in the first place. Apparently, the guy's name is Yamada, and he used to be a broke, middle-aged man who had nothing left to live for. In his younger years, he lived a very lavish lifestyle, and he ended up buried deep in debt. When the time finally came for him to repay what he owed, he had no money left at all. Because of that, a man known as the Puppet Master took his body as payment instead. Yamada was then subjected to a procedure where he was genetically modified, and multiple bombs were implanted throughout his body, turning him into a living weapon and forcing him to work as a hitman. After the surgery was completed, the Puppet Master personally arrived and informed Yamada that bombs had been placed all over his body. He also explained that Yamada could activate these bombs at any time by simply clicking his back tooth, a technique known as the explosion roulette. This meant that if Yamada ever found himself facing an enemy and was about to be defeated, he could trigger the explosion and take his opponent down with him. Having this kind of fail-safe reignited a sense of purpose and excitement within Yamada. With this new mindset, he ran out into the streets and literally started punching random guys on the street. However, everything changed the day he happened to run into Toshiki. Toshiki completely overpowered him in a fight and beat him so badly that Yamada ended up losing his limbs in the process. At that moment, Yamada thought Toshiki was going to finish him off completely, but instead, Toshiki simply leaned in and gave him a hug. While being held like that, Yamada thought it was the perfect opportunity to activate the explosion roulette and take Toshiki down with him. But just before he could click his back tooth, a small bug flew out of his mouth. Toshiki calmly explained that he had already disarmed the trigger mechanism, making it impossible for Yamada to activate the bombs. After saying that, Toshiki simply turned around and walked away without killing him. From that day on, Yamada developed a deep hatred for Toshiki because he felt that Toshiki had taken away the one thing that gave his life meaning again, which was the ability to go out in a final explosion. Returning to the present, Yamada begins walking away from the scene, convinced that Gero must have died in the explosion. However, as the smoke from the blast slowly clears, appears, Gero suddenly steps out from within a protective barrier that he had created to shield himself from the attack. Seeing this completely shocks Yamada, as he realizes that Gero survived against one of his best techniques. Their battle continues for quite a while, and during the fight, Yamada actually appears to overpower Gero for a period of time. Seeing this, Yamada tells Gero that he should just go ahead and use his modified bloodline already if he wants to survive. However, Gero calmly replies that he refuses to waste that kind of power on someone like him. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, Mei is currently giving a speech in Gero's place in front of all the guests. Since Gero left so suddenly, he never had the chance to tell her what he originally planned to say, so Mei is forced to improvise by making things up while pretending to read from a fake letter. Surprisingly, the speech ends up being incredibly heartfelt, and it actually reaches Toshiki emotionally. Hearing those words causes him to think back to the time he met Gero again in an alley after all those years. At the same time, the battle outside continues, becoming more and more intense. Gero has gradually adapted to Yamada's fighting style by skillfully using the spider webs provided by Toshiki's spiders during combat. Using the webs, Gero manages to wrap Yamada up, spin him around violently, and throw him far away. After doing that, Gero tells him to just stay down and stop fighting because he does not want to kill anyone on a day that is supposed to be about celebrating a wedding. However, as Yamada is falling through the air, the puppet master suddenly begins speaking to him telepathically. He informs Yamada that he has now removed all of his limiters, meaning Yamada can unleash enough explosive power to wipe out Toshiki and destroy the entire wedding ceremony in one massive blast. After hearing that, Yamada immediately shifts his attention away from Gero and starts heading directly toward the wedding venue instead. But right before he launches the attack, he catches sight of Toshiki smiling happily and genuinely enjoying himself at his wedding alongside Anna and all the guests. Seeing that moment suddenly reminds Yamada of the day Toshiki hugged him despite the fact that they were enemies. That memory changes his mind completely. Instead of attacking the wedding, Yamada flies high into the sky and blows himself up far away from everyone else. After the explosion happens, the dark clouds above begin to clear, and a beautiful sunset slowly fills the sky. Meanwhile, back at the wedding, Toshiki thanks Mei for giving such a wonderful speech on Gero's behalf. However, Mei honestly feels that Toshiki is being far too kind toward Gero, especially because Toshiki has always supported him and been there for him throughout the years. Toshiki then reveals that the Gero family is actually one of the 5 families standing at the very top of the master hierarchy. According to him, masters like the Bug Masters and Needle Masters are only members of smaller branch families from the Poison Clan, meaning their status and ranking are actually very low compared to the highest families. Toshiki explains that his father used to tell him stories about how the top-ranking families manipulated lives and committed terrible acts over the years in order to maintain their positions and authority. Because of that, his father always warned him not to become too comfortable around those families or assume they all shared the same values. When Toshiki actually first met Gero, he expected him to act intimidating or arrogant because of his status. Instead, he was genuinely shocked by how calm and composed Gero was the entire time. Unlike many other poison masters who constantly liked showing off their abilities and power, Gero never acted that way and never felt any need to prove himself to others. Toshiki says that this is one of the main reasons why he admires Gero so much as a person. Not long after that, Tsunagi comes over, so both he and Toshiki bow toward Mei and ask her to do her absolute best to help Gero finally find himself a wife someday. Mei laughs after hearing that and promises that she will truly do her best. Meanwhile, Gero finally returns and is shocked to discover that Mei has already bonded with all of his colleagues while he was gone. At the end of the ceremony, everyone gathers together to see Toshiki and Anna off properly as they prepare to leave. Toshiki then spreads out his large butterfly wings and flies away into the sky together with Anna while everyone watches them depart. Meanwhile, somewhere else, an assassin with dual-colored hair has just finished killing another target successfully. His partner praises him for carrying out the mission so efficiently before sending him information about the next master on the assassination list. And the next target turns out to be Gero. That was episode 7. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen. I heard that you addicted to them sands now.